What I witnessed after death was so extraordinary that it challenged any preconceived notion about the afterlife. Once there, I realized that even paradise can be overwhelming. I knew without a doubt that I belonged to that place. But what I saw was a world that only vaguely resembled the magnificent realm people often talk about. Having experienced it firsthand, I can confidently say that most of what is said about higher planes of existence is simply false. It bore no resemblance to what I had imagined. These words belong to Arthur Jensen, a geologist who, through a twist of fate, found himself in the other world, specifically in the parts often referred to as paradise. A serious scientist, Jensen had always scoffed at those who believed in the existence of the soul or the reality of an afterlife. He dismissed religious and esoteric ideas as mere fantasies. However, everything changed in August 1932 when Jensen was involved in a car accident that resulted in complete cardiac arrest. During that time, he experienced a near-death encounter, traveling to the other world and returning with revelations that were nothing short of astonishing. He described his extraordinary experience this way: "When the doctors confirmed my time of death, I felt my soul begin to leave my body. This took me by surprise because, as an atheist, I never expected something like this to happen." According to Jensen, at the moment his soul separated from his physical form, he felt a pang of fear. He feared that if he completely detached from his body, he would die. But despite his anxiety, he realized that he had no control over what was happening. Fortunately, nothing tragic occurred. My soul, or my consciousness, my true essence, gradually floated out of my body through the top of my head, and I felt my connection to the flesh breaking. Arthur Jensen recounted. He began to ascend, first over his own body, then over the hospital, and higher still, until the earth disappeared from his view. For a brief moment, his consciousness seemed to reorganize, as if it were tuning into a new perception. From there, he was witness to a new world that gradually became brighter, more vivid, and more tangible. Then, with another shift in his consciousness, he found himself standing in a stunning meadow. In the distance, two towering mountains rose, their snow-capped peaks towering above slopes, adorned with indescribable beauty. Despite the apparent distance of several dozen kilometers, Jensen could distinguish each flower blooming on the mountainside. As his metaphysical vision became clearer, 100 times sharper than before, he marveled at the landscape around him, filling his soul with wonder and admiration. He then noticed a group of people who appeared to be walking. When they felt his gaze, they stopped, and several of them came over to him, greeting him warmly. They all seemed to be in the prime of life, each over 20 or 30 years old. Arthur Jensen was impressed by their grace and effortless energy. One of them told him he was in another world and explained some of the extraordinary abilities they possessed. The inhabitants were immune to fatigue, could read minds and move instantly to any place they desired. But these abilities were exclusive to those residing in paradise, the very realm where Arthur Jensen found himself. The residents of this other world also shared with him a startling truth: the common notion of paradise as a place of eternal happiness where one does nothing but indulge in pleasure was completely false. Such ideas belonged only to those who had lived lives of little purpose on earth. Arthur Jensen reflected on this, saying that in the higher spheres of the other world, people work diligently, especially on themselves, refining their personal, spiritual qualities. Here, they have the opportunity to fully realize their talents and potential. There is no room for idleness in paradise. Those who expect it to be a place of endless leisure are gravely mistaken. Don't think that the higher realms will satisfy your selfish and basic desires. The order there is much deeper and wiser than you could imagine. What Arthur Jensen witnessed around him filled him with awe, but as he contemplated the beauty of his surroundings, he suddenly experienced a strange sense of familiarity. It was as if he had been there before. Later he described this feeling. As I gazed upon paradise before me, I had an overwhelming sense that this place was not new to me. It felt familiar, as if I had been here in a past life. Then, an epiphany struck him. He remembered that this was his true home. His earthly life had merely been a temporary stay, a visit to a place that was never really his. While in paradise, Arthur Jensen came to understand many profound truths about the nature of the other world. One reality that struck him was the reason this realm seemed eternal. Everything in it is perfectly balanced and unchanging. Unlike life on earth, where elements mix and decompose, every part of paradise is sustained by the principle of forgiveness, keeping everything in its place and preventing any destruction. Having set aside his old atheistic beliefs, Arthur Jensen could not resist asking the inhabitants about God, seeking to understand the nature of the Creator. To his surprise, no one had ever seen him. But this was not because God did not exist. Rather, it was because the Creator was so vast, so immense, that even the souls in paradise were unable to perceive him directly. However, every soul there could feel the profound presence of God's energy, a force of love, wisdom, and goodness that emanated from him. Arthur Jensen referred to this energy as super vibration. According to him, this divine force emanates from God, guiding the universe and maintaining cosmic order. It permeates all things, which is why it is said that the Lord resides in every particle of the universe. During his time in paradise, Arthur Jensen came to a simple yet profound realization. To truly understand God, one must strive to be as great as he is. This requires continuous self-improvement, and this, he concluded, was the true purpose of paradise. Not for souls to rest in idleness, but to engage in the joyful work of spiritual growth, bringing them closer to the Creator. Arthur Jensen once said, "Some believe in God, others do not. But when we find ourselves in a difficult situation, we start to pray as if he exists. No matter how much we deny it, deep down, we all know that God is real." And now even I, a former atheist, understand that God is a combination of many things. The unknown laws of nature, light, electricity, gravity, time, infinite space, and life itself. Jensen also learned that not everyone ends up in a beautiful paradise after death. Instead, souls are rewarded or punished based on their true nature, determined by their vibrations. After death, souls are divided according to high and low vibration. High vibrations indicate a life filled with good deeds, altruism, and spiritual growth, while low vibrations reflect a life devoted to fulfilling selfish desire. In the afterlife, a soul can only exist in areas that align with its internal vibrations, like attracts, like souls with high vibrations are drawn to heaven, while those with low vibrations are taken to places that people often call hell. Arthur Jensen shared his thoughts on this. Some believe that hell is a place of eternal cold, burning abyss. In truth, both are right. It is cold there, but not in a physical sense. It's a subtle cold, almost material. It arises from the fact that souls there exist in the lowest possible vibrations and, as a result, perceive their surroundings as a frozen and hostile space. Low vibrations are linked to destructive mental traits like hatred, greed, selfishness, cynicism, and indifference. These souls, even in the afterlife, cling to their earthly desires, which they can no longer satisfy in the absence of physical matter. This unfulfilled longing creates an inner fire, the flame of eternal dissatisfaction. As a result, while the exterior of the soul feels frozen, its interior burns with the torment of hell. The overall experience is one of suffocating darkness. Arthur Jensen also observed that these souls desperately need help, as they are unable to help themselves. To offer guidance, higher beings occasionally descend into these dark realms to assist those who are ready to repent and begin their journey towards true paradise. As he conversed with the souls in the afterlife, Arthur Jensen felt his mind clearing. He began to understand that earthly life has a purpose. Just as this realization came to him, one of his new acquaintances informed him that he would have to return to Earth. This news filled Arthur with indignation. He had no desire to leave this beautiful realm. He pleaded to be allowed to stay, but the inhabitants of the afterlife stood firm. They explained that he still had important work to do on Earth. One of them added that a time of great turmoil was approaching, and many people would need his spiritual guidance. When his earthly task was complete, he could return to this magnificent world and remain there forever. After hearing these words, Arthur Jensen experienced a strange, tingling sensation and understanding. In a matter of moments, he awakened in his body. Now, having experienced such an extraordinary journey, he no longer hid his astonishment. He openly admitted that he was wrong about the existence of the metaphysical, the nature of humanity, and the afterlife. With newfound clarity, he had the courage to acknowledge that even the most fervent atheists, those who aggressively deny the spiritual world, secretly harbor the hope that life continues after death. Despite the many who repeat the notion that no one has returned from the beyond, they are still drawn to the topic, reading books and watching movies about the afterlife. If they truly do not believe in another world, why do they keep returning to the subject? It seems like a strange form of self-deception. Vincent Hensley is another person who traveled to the afterlife and returned with a special spiritual mission. In 2011, at the age of 60, he experienced clinical death, during which he visited paradise. It all happened this way. While working on his farm in a quiet Swiss village, Vincent was driving a tractor up a slope when an insect flew into his eye, temporarily blinding him. In that brief moment, he lost control, and the tractor began to accelerate toward a steep cliff. Without wasting any time, he made the decision to jump. But as he did, the out-of-control vehicle struck him and dragged him. When Vincent Hensley regained consciousness, he found himself in what could only be described as heaven, paradise. The experience was beyond anything he had ever known. Later, he shared his thoughts. Upon entering heaven, I saw many things that looked nothing like anything human. I felt that some of these figures were familiar to me, as if they were dear to me, perhaps relatives, even my parents, waiting for me. But even though I sensed their presence, I couldn't recognize them by their appearance. I also saw other beings made of light, and their presence brought me peace and comfort. Then, something descended from above. Vincent called it the higher powers. These forces carried with them an overwhelming sense of goodness, and with their arrival, everything around him was bathed in a brilliant golden light. The beings radiated wisdom and strength. They told him that he was indeed in paradise, but there was still work to be done on earth. They instructed him to share his experience through words and, perhaps more surprisingly, through paintings. Vincent was confused. He had never painted in his life, and the idea of creating art suddenly seemed impossible. But one of the voices of the higher powers insisted that he start painting images of the other world and share them with the world. The task felt both impossible and sacred to the farmer, but he promised to do his best. However, he emphasized that the skills required were beyond his control. The higher powers reassured him, promising that once he returned to Earth, the conditions would adjust to help him fulfill this mission. Once Vincent accepted the mission, he began his journey back to Earth. But before returning, they showed him many parts of paradise, allowing him to deeply absorb the experience, especially the vibrations that filled the realm, so that he could later convey them through his art. When Vincent returned to his body, he was overwhelmed by an unbearable pain as he recovered from the accident. He later described this time. For a long time, the pain was unbearable. But what worried me the most was how I would fulfill the task that the higher powers of paradise had entrusted to me. I knew I had been brought back to life for this purpose. But what if I couldn't draw? What if I failed? The anxiety consumed me. One night, while I was still recovering in the hospital, Vincent suddenly felt an overwhelming urge to get out of bed and paint. He had no knowledge of how to handle paints or brushes, nor did he know exactly what to paint. But he felt a guiding force behind him, a presence that would help him. He painted all night long, and when he was done, he went back. Vincent later recalled, "Those paintings weren't really mine. Yes, my hands held the brush, but it was the higher forces from another realm working through me. I was brought back to life on the condition that I fulfill the mission entrusted to me." From that moment on, Vincent Hensley felt he was a bridge between heaven and earth. He was grateful for the opportunity to fulfill the task assigned to him by the higher powers, doing the best he could. He also felt the need to share this message. We all need to prepare for life after death because it exists, whether we believe in it or not. Each of us has a purpose in life, and we must do everything we can to fulfill it, because it has a profound impact on what happens to us after we leave our mortal existence.